I moved here when I was 10, and I could tell you that I've never put my feet in that water in my whole life. But it took me a while to really like think back on that and say, damn, man, I lived next to a river and I never ever went in it. And it was this unsaid thing, like, don't go in the river, right? And so that's kind of wild to think about.
So the Duwamish River is a super fun site, and it was declared in 2001 when our organization was created, and we want to make sure that community that is impacted directly by the Superfund gets to have a seat on the table and a voice to make sure that it's the people who are living impacted, the ones who are making the decisions on how that river should be cleaned.
And the PCAT, I believe, formally came together in 2018. These are folks that live in South Park, work in South Park, go to school in South Park. In essence, we're kind of like we work in partnership with the port as eyes and ears of the community. We are here to uplift the community, to connect them through prisms, one of which is economic access. There's, healthy communities. And then lastly, it's community capacity building, and that's a really important one because in order to partner with the port and be meaningful partners, we have to figure out a way to be at equal levels. And so how do we get the port to meet the neighborhood where they are, right?
We work very closely with the Port of Seattle to make sure that that cleanup was going to represent the voices of the community, and it's going to meet the health standards and the habitat standards needed in these communities. So it speaks to that community power and voice that can make a transformational change to benefit after having a contaminated site.
It's such a new space for us, and now having it as a habitat and restoration site and also known as a park, and having that access to the water will be a life-changing for our community members. We only have the Duwamish Waterway Park as an access to the water, but now having new sites, it's opening for families to be able to walk to a site nearby home.
This site is the most significant habitat restoration site in the city of Seattle in the last generation. It's certainly the biggest on the Duwamish. It is a critical location for habitat restoration and public shoreline access because there's none here, or very little in South Park.
My hope is that remains as a great asset to the community, that community can care for it, that this gives a good example for other and for the port, that we can make things happen in the right way when we want to, and when we have the willingness to it, and when we listen to community.
And so what does it look like for the port to reimagine what it looks like to center the community and really look at the community as partners, where all the things that are operating at the port, you have neighbors right next door that can do a lot of that work. And I think the port is like doing some of that.
The future is continued partnerships, continuing to take advice and take guidance from communities most impacted by port operations and port impact. And this is just the perfect example of this just going really well. The community had ideas, and they brought it to us, and the port commissioners and the port staff at the time had enough foresight to listen and to be open-minded and creative about how to make these ideas work.